day the one that fits ya.
I'm really happy to have another woman on this, because when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, if it's just going to be me, Yusuf, and Kalunji.
Oh, yeah.
It's very,
That's true.
yeah, anyway, we'll get into that.
Well, at least this time we've at least got someone on the panel who is a female perspective compared to last time. It was just the three of us.
Yeah, I was going to feel the pressure. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be representing womankind. I can't do it.
Yeah, we were going to have to ask you all the questions.
Yeah.
All of that, yeah.
You were going to be very polite. But, I'm a man, so I don't know. What's it like for you, Katasi?
Yeah, oh man. Listen, we were trying to navigate that last time. God damn.
Yeah.
Well, we made it through though. We made it through. Like just last time, it was like trying to make, at least for me, I was trying to make sure I don't say the wrong thing. I was like, all throughout, I was like, fuck. Even like saying the term female, I watched it back, I was like, wait, I know some women are offended by the term female, so let me not say that. And it was a smorgasbord of like, just offensive terms, I'm sure, that I said.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I'm happy Louise is here. Thank you for joining, Louise.
Oh, thanks for reminding me and letting me know that the book was like a quick read, because I got it done just before the call.
Oh,
that's good. So it's fresh then. It's fresh in your mind.
Yeah, it's fresh. It's fresh.
Okay, well, we might as well get started soon as we started. Katasi, do you want to start with like, maybe the rules and guidelines to Louise, so that she gets an idea? Yeah.
I remember them. So basically, it's just the Nile Book Club is an inclusive space. We want everyone's voices to be heard, and so Kalonji and I take it in turns to like sort of pose questions or host. But since it's quite a small number, this should flow quite organically. And we just basically ask that we listen to one another and just respect each other's opinions. And this is recorded, so by being here and by being recorded, it sort of suggests that you are happy for us to then publish this. And we have a waiver, a disclaimer form that we ask people to sign, but I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks.
Okay. Kalunji, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it. You covered it really well. And I think, to reiterate, we definitely respect everyone's opinion and we listen to each other. And obviously, myself and Yusuf would try not to do what men usually do and try to monopolize the conversation. So, and especially with this topic as well. So with that in mind, Katasi, take the floor.
Okay, well, since it's fresh in Louise's mind, I don't know, for the viewers, I guess it's just useful to know what it's about. Essentially, like just a quick roundup. Like, Louise, are you happy to do that, or should I do it?
Yeah, sure. So it's a short story about a woman who is pregnant and she's going through labor, and it's the first child that she's giving birth to following having previously been pregnant from a previous relationship, and sadly her relationship with the father of the child has broken down. So she's talking from her perspective as a new mum, having to now venture into motherhood outside of a relationship. Then she's also talking about her mum's experience being the second wife to her husband, and the different dynamics that created within her relationship with her father. And then
yeah, I think that's
good. Yeah, that's pretty much the summary. Yeah,
that's great.
It reads like the first chapter of what could be a really epic story, and so I'm interested in to understand like how Chimamanda decided, right, this is how I'm gonna create this is how I'm going to approach this book, because I've read some of her other books and they're sort of long novels in the standard format that you would expect. So yeah, this was very different. When you said it was 34 pages long, I was like, oh wow, okay, so that's like part one of a possible series of books.
Yeah, I felt like I normally read short stories within like an anthology of stories, but this was a standalone. So when I got to the end, I was quite I wanted more.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys thought in terms of like generally what were your overall views, Yusuf and Kalonji?
Yeah, So I actually liked the fact that it was a short story, one, because I probably didn't have time to read a whole book, but focusing on the story itself, I usually do read short stories, and so I'm quite familiar with how they work. I liked this particular one because it was very unexpected. It's not similar to anything that I've read before, and I think it's one of the few short stories that I've read that have left me wanting more of the story because it felt like it was incomplete by the end. And so I definitely echo Louise's sort of impression towards the end of that.
Yeah, I agree actually completely. I felt when it got to the end, I was like kind of tapping my Kindle, thinking, "Wait, is there more?"
Yes, yes.
I was thinking, surely there's got to be more. But I think that I think that's a really good feeling to have for like, especially a short story, because it gives her kind of, I guess, a potential new idea, like Louise said, maybe an opening chapter or a part one to a much bigger story. So it gives her additional material, potential additional material. But also B for us is that we're left wanting more, and I'm still thinking about the characters. Like, I want to know, does Kwame ever get in touch? And it's, I know it's worth kind of mentioning as well, even though whoever's watching this on YouTube, they must have known, but we're discussing Zikora by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So if you're just joining us now somehow and you haven't seen the beginning, that's what we're talking about. But yeah, I was kind of like left wondering, like, does Kwame ever get in touch? How does she raise the child? Like, does she kind of like go back to Nigeria? Does she stay in I think Washington, is it where she is? So it's really, really, really interesting book. Story, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like despite how short it was punching with so many themes and so many, like, I wouldn't say taboo subjects, but things that sort of stay within the realms of homes, especially like African homes. So for example, like the polygamous relationship that her father had, or like his, I will call him polygamous. Yeah. I don't know. I've never really had the chance to hear from the people who are experiencing those relationships, but it gave us an insight into that just in a few sentences, and then touching on abortion and touching on circumcision. So like it was punching, but still like it served each topic really well. And I think that was quite an ambitious thing to do in just 34 pages.
Yeah. No, it seems like there's kind of a thread in the books we've read so far. Each book we've read three, this is the third one, has talked about polygamous relationships, from Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart to The First Woman by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi, and then to Zikora by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Like, there's almost like this thread of polygamy when it comes to, stories about Africa. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, I've noticed that in this one and also in The First Woman. Both of them are from this perspective of the female, and I'd be keen to read a story that's from the perspective of the male as well, and from the perspective of the second wife, because in this it's the first wife that's talking about the fact that she had to open up her relationship and her home to, well, not necessarily her home, but open up her relationship to her husband's desire to get a second wife. And I think in The First Woman it was kind of the same. It was the first family talking about their position of having a second matriarch coming in, and the dynamic between the two women. But yeah, it's a cultural thing, right? Because it seems like in West Africa and also in East Africa, it's not uncommon for the older generation to have polygamous relationships. And in my family, there is a couple of aunties, they're from Muslim community, that are first or second or even third wives. And as a British Ugandan female, I find it very fascinating to look at that structure of marriage, which for me is like unconventional, because for me, like monogamy is sort of like the conventional way of doing it. And I always wonder, you know, what does it feel like to be that woman? Especially the first wife who was chosen and then now has to kind of accept that your husband is choosing someone else, and what does that do to their own sense of themselves? Like, do they still value themselves in the same way? Do they feel that they don't have a choice because ultimately it's the husband who decides, right, I want to marry again? How those conversations are handled, and whether or not they can still have the same level of intimacy with their husband following him bringing another woman into their marriage.
Yeah, I mean, just before we hear from the men, alongside that, she still prides herself as being the first wife because she can set the rules. She can sort of still be the official wife in the photos, attend the ceremonies. So she's still playing into it. I just thought I'd add that.
Yeah, I think with the 3 books that we've read, polygamy, as you've mentioned, has been more from the female perspective. But I think it's also worth sort of asking yourself why that is the case. I just essentially found myself thinking about how it would be if, you know, in the 3 books that we've read, it's gone the other way. So it's the husband that's gone off and, you know, found a second woman or a second wife. How would it be if it was the wife who has, you know, like that sort of concept, if it was the other way around, and how that would be perceived in society? And I'm just curious to see what you guys think about that question.
If it was
can you repeat the question?
So if it was the other way around, so essentially if it was the woman introducing a new partner into the marriage, into the relationship, for various reasons. I mean, the reasons that we've had so far have been more related to, for example, giving birth, or so what would it be if the dynamic was different, if it was the other way around? So if it was the woman who's introducing a new partner into the relationship. What do you guys think about that sort of question?
I mean, excuse my ignorance, but is that something that typically happens at least in African culture? Well,
that's precisely why I'm thinking about it, because it's you know, if we open up the discussion about polygamy and the cultural aspects of it, we do know that it's unconventional for it to go the other way. But that's essentially why I'm thinking how things would be perceived if it was the other way around.
I think there's cultures in East Africa where women are allowed to have like multiple partners, like they promote polygamy, or it's accepted. And I want to say I'm going to keep it broad and say East Africa, but I've heard of this. For me, it's about consenting adults, right? So like, I know in Islam, you're supposed to ask for first wife, aren't you? Traditionally, and then she accepts, right? So I think that if it's sort of consensual and like a discussion, I don't see what's wrong with that. But what's interesting for me is my first encounter with polygamy was when I was about 8 or 9. The people that were working for us, the husband took a second wife, and I don't think he consulted the first wife, and they were West African. So basically, she schemed with her girlfriend to attack this younger, weaker, and she was so young, blessed her, she didn't have anyone to support her. And I remember it all, it's a bit of a blur, but I remember it being like 8 or 9 and wondering, wow, what's happening? But basically they attacked her with like chili and like tried to pour it in her eyes, really just trying to like let her know who was number one. So that stuck in my mind for a while. But for me, I guess it just comes down to the lack of consultation and it not being like an equal type of discussion.
Yeah. I'm just quickly remembering, like from in Zikora, how Zikora's mom kind of felt like I guess the consultation was there, but he kind of changed the terms or the rules of engagement halfway, which I think was probably maybe the most painful thing about it, because she was under the impression that she was going to be the first woman, or the first wife rather, and then, you know, the second wife coincidentally, seemingly concocted a plan to make her the center of attention and take the husband away. So yeah, like, I think that's maybe the perils of like the whole polygamous relationship aspect. And in response to your kind of scenario, Yusuf, where the dude is the one who has to accept a new partner into the relationship. Yeah, like, it'll be interesting to see like a book or a story or something. I'm sure they're out there that have explored this, because anytime, you know, when I briefly kind of considered ever trying to like in the future think of being in a polygamous relationship, so a question that's always asked me or is asked to me is, would you be okay if it was the other way around? And immediately I'm thinking, no, I don't think I would be, to be honest with you. I don't think I guess my ego, or I'm secure enough in myself as a husband or whatever relationship it is to accept a new partner in. I don't think I can. So yeah.
I think, sorry, just to sort of shed more light on that. The reason I asked that is because if you think about it, for the reasons why in this specific short story, why he decided to get a second wife, it's because of the cultural aspect of inheritance, wasn't it, if I remember correctly, and the fact that they needed to be male heirs. Looking at it from a scientific point of view, and as two grown adults having a consensual discussion about polygamy and how they can bring about that male heir, it is not always so for example, if suppose they didn't have any kids and they were trying to have kids, and but essentially if he was infertile, and essentially she could be the one to provide that male heir by bringing in a third person. So that's where this question came from. And so I think, yes, it's definitely very controversial. And from a male perspective, it would it's uncomfortable. I'll accept it would probably be very uncomfortable because of the fact that it's very unconventional. But if we sort of look at Western societies and Western cultures, I feel like they're a lot more ahead of time. If I'm trying to look for the right words, it is a very difficult thing to talk about this, but they are probably ahead of time when it comes to polygamous relationships and that sort of thing.
Sorry, Louise. I was just wondering the same thing too, because there's no guarantee like he's going to go there. There's no like you can't confirm. There's no certainty that she would have birthed boys, but you know he got lucky and she did. And I know a number of Ugandan men that have done this, looking for their heir, and it hasn't worked because, like Yusuf, you're the scientist here, right? Isn't it true that it's a man's chromosome that decides like the gender of the baby, right?
Yeah. So because it's got an X and Y chromosome, and it depends on whether he gives away the X or the Y chromosome. So it is, yeah.
So if it's not working out, it's not working out. Anyway, and also I just wanted to add that in House of Cards, they explore that relationship actually, because Claire she has like, I don't want to call them side pieces, but she's involved in with other men, and Frank's very aware, as is Frank as well. Yeah. So it's not just this concept that's within the African realm.
No, definitely. As long as it's consensual and you're both comfortable with it, then why not?
Sorry,
yeah, there was a show on Channel 4 called The Tribe a little while ago. It was like a reality show in which a British family moved into a local African community that are living very traditionally and living a very nomadic life. And in that tribe, there was a woman who had a boyfriend and she had a husband. And she was explaining that her boyfriend is the love relationship, but because he was poor, her family advised her that she should have a husband of higher socioeconomic status, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to provide for her. And so she has both. I think she can have children by both, but she explained that to them it's just normal, that her husband is there for sort of economic and financial reasons, and her boyfriend is there for the emotional support. And I do wonder, yeah, I just do wonder how those transactional type of relationships can be sustained in the absence of emotional intimacy, and whether the man feels that his value is solely tied to what he can bring to the woman from an economic perspective, and whether his emotional needs are actually being met as well.
Do you guys think that Kwame was right to kind of ghost Zikora simply because she made this decision without, like, there wasn't consent in regards to her keeping a baby?
I don't think it was right for him to ghost her, but I do believe that it should have been a mutual decision, because they both created the life. And yeah, but then given that they were both participating on protected sex, he kind of gave his implied consent that a life could be created, by virtue of the fact that he's not taking proactive steps to prevent a pregnancy. And so from that perspective, I feel like he has to live with the consequences of the choice that he also made, which is to engage in unprotected sex.
But to kind of link it to what she kind of wrestles with herself, he was under the impression, I think, that she either was on the pill or he didn't have an understanding of how the woman's body worked, because she then goes into this whole kind of flashback of like, oh, actually, to think about it, there's certain things or ways he reacted when she mentioned things to do with her body. So do you think do you think by him not kind of using protection, that was like evidence of his implied consent, or he just was ignorant of like how the woman's body worked and how babies were made?
I think she was speaking to the broader issue of the fact that reproductive health is always left to women. You know, we are the ones that are expected to sort of be counting days and things like that. And like, you know, there's no male pill yet, or is there? Maybe, I don't know, I'm not up to date with like pharmaceuticals, but like generally speaking, society puts that pressure on women and responsibility. So he was involved in every aspect of their life, from like what restaurants they'd go to, but hadn't done the due diligence on this. So I just think it was just irresponsible of him to just ghost her. One, and I think that's what Chimamanda was trying to highlight, that men do sort of pontificate that they are very well versed in women's bodies. Like, you can please a woman sexually, but you don't know that the key things around how babies are made, like the whole remark around the period. That was really quite funny, actually. Like, you can't hold a period in.
Yeah. He was, I mean, for a seemingly intelligent guy, he was pretty stupid, actually. Because, yeah, I just don't know how he didn't really think about that. But I guess
it is his responsibility, right? He didn't see it as his responsibility, and that might be because of the culture that he's raised in, where men aren't taught to take responsibility for whether or not a child is going to be made. It's, you know, the woman is the incubator, and ultimately the life, it's conceived inside the woman, it grows inside the woman, it's born out of the woman. And so that might mean that men don't really see it as their responsibility as far as creating a life and the consequences of unprotected sex. But equally, I also say that as a woman, she was also implicitly consenting to creating a life by allowing him to engage in unprotected sex. You know, I feel like it's both mutually. It was a choice that they made, and so the consequence is for both of them to make a decision on. Also, I've heard stories from men who say when the child is conceived, the woman sort of treats the decision of whether or not to keep the child as her own. And so maybe that's why men distance themselves from the process, because they already feel like an outsider. It's like, well, it's the woman that says it's my body, it's my baby. I decide to keep it without consulting you. And so, yeah, it just sort of takes their role in the process away from them to a certain extent.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think personally, I think there was a lot of miscommunication prior to the decision. And I like the fact that she highlights that they'd communicated about everything pretty well, and he was very good at, at involving both parties in every single decision, to the point where, in hindsight, she realized that even the smallest of decisions, like choosing what to eat over dinner or whatever, was basically consensual. But in this one major decision, I think there was a lot of miscommunication. And unfortunately, when he came down to it and she was pregnant and she wanted to keep it and he didn't, yes, I think it was his, he should be involved in the decision, and it's his responsibility, and he should be part of the process. But I also think the way I saw it is that actually this is a reflection of what happens in real life, and there's a lot of people out there who just end up having, who are single parents, and they go through a very similar situation where, they get to a point where one partner does not want kids, but they've always wanted a kid, and she was 39, and this is pretty much, she's getting to the point where it's now or never. And so I completely understand why she chose to keep the baby, and I also understand why he sort of stepped away, because he didn't want kids, and I respect that decision.
Yeah, the only thing I don't respect is just completely ghosting her like that. Like, he could have at least somehow stayed in her life. She was even willing to kind of say, you can lay the terms, you can be involved as much as you want to, but he completely blocked her number. Like, he's never had any, like, he's never met her parents. Oh, sorry, like, she's never met his parents, or they've never had this kind of like deep relationship. It's like, I felt for her, and I didn't really respect the fact that he just ghosted her like that. At least replied to her text messages and say, listen.
There's a reason. Sorry, there's a reason for that, though. I think this is why it's a short story, because it leaves so many questions unanswered. We completely have no idea why he's decided to make the decisions that he's made. So you could come up with any reason to explain why he's decided to completely, blank her. One of them being that, honestly, there's people out there who do not want to have kids, like, whatsoever. And that is, and for them, having kids is such a traumatic thing that they would never even consider it. And him hearing that he's going to have a kid completely just, it hits him so hard that he can never recover from it. And so the best way for him to move on is to completely distance himself. And so there's, unfortunately, it's a short story and can never really understand why he makes, why he does that. But, I personally chose to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that there's valid reason as to why he's decided to do that.
Yeah, but then from my perspective, if he adamantly knew that he didn't want to have kids, either he should have had a vasectomy or he shouldn't be having unprotected sex. So even that is a contradiction in itself. You definitely know you don't want kids, but yeah, then you're engaging in activities where there's a chance that you'll create a child. And as you said, there's probably more to the story. I'd like to know about his childhood. Maybe something has happened to him that has shaped his mindset towards being a parent. He might have experienced like negative outcomes from his father, or the relationship he has with his parents, and that might be driving his choice to disengage. But as you said, it's an interesting way to open up a conversation about this idea that men who don't want children still engage in acts that could create a life, and then when it happens, they distance themselves.
Yes.
I think the point that you made earlier on, Louise, around like women wanting to have dialogue but then still having the ultimate decision, was like a continuous theme in the book in terms of the relationships that Zikora had and her cousin. So when Zikora was at university, she had that the abortion. And again, the guy was very casual and very flippant about it. He just said, "Oh, the condom slipped off." Like, whatever happened to that guy? Like, I don't think she told him that she was pregnant, did she? She just made the decision on her own. And then her cousin, whose name I can't pronounce, Mimilaku, the cousin who then falls pregnant with her 6th child,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She then she sends her the money covert, like underhandedly, and then she goes ahead and has an abortion. There's no consulting with like, where are the men in all of this?
Yeah.
It's only when men want to have babies that they, in terms of her father, right, that we hear them being sort of their voices being amplified.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I feel it feels like in those two occasions. Well, okay, the first one with Zikora, she's 19 years old. She ain't really ready to be a mother. So I guess she gets rid of the baby without consulting the guy for that reason. And she knows she's with a young man potentially. And then with her cousin, she's had like 5 kids. So she doesn't want to have another kid. So, you know, maybe possibly, I think the husband is presented as someone who does want to have more kids. So she doesn't feel that she should engage with him. So maybe, I don't know the point I'm making. I guess maybe just if I was to kind of like summarize it, is that in those 2 occasions, it's always been with I guess inconvenient partners, people that they can't really have like engage in a conversation with. The 19-year-old, what 19-year-old is gonna be like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll drop out of uni and be a dad. So she's probably thinking, no point having a conversation with him. And then the other dude, of course, he's going to say yes, but she don't want to have more kids. And she's the one who has to, you know, like Louisa said, the incubator of this baby. So it's like, she doesn't feel like she should present that to him. And I don't want to speak for those characters or speak for women in general, but just my main beef for this Kwame guy is that you can't just ghost her like that, even though you say you didn't want to have kids in the first place. Like Louisa said, then you should have A, worn a condom, B, got a vasectomy, or just, you know, your pull-up game should have been a little bit stronger. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Kalonji. Like, I don't want to make excuses for Kwame. I don't care if he had some parental issues or like some childhood trauma. Like, this is inexcusable behavior. And then just to go back to Zikora's cousin, I don't think much of their sex life was consensual because he would just climb on her.
Yeah.
So there was also some level of dysfunction around it. I don't think she had much say, and this was her only sort of her last resort to sort of salvage her body or claim her body.
I think I completely agree with you guys, but would you just let me play devil's advocate for just a minute, yeah?
You're just very good at playing devil's advocate.
Yeah. So, Louise, you mentioned something very interesting. Actually, we should speak a lot more about this because they tell us about how perfect his family was, right? And how perfect he was growing up and how he was the perfect child, right? Who is a perfect child? No one. And we all know perfect kids are always the ones who've got something essentially wrong with them that they can't show the world because they're perfect, right? And the other thing is that she is from a wealthy family, right? She's got nothing to worry about if she does have a kid, right? And she's 39. She's got into this relationship with this guy that, that in her mind is what she's been looking for such a, for the whole of her life since she was 19 or whatever. And we're sort of putting that responsibility of having that conversation about kids on Kwame, that he should have made it clear that he didn't want to have kids. I feel like she equally should have been, should have had that conversation. Like, look, instead of just assuming that them not using contraception and, assuming that was implying that they were, that they were both comfortable with having kids, she should have outright had that conversation. What potentially prevented her from doing that? I remember a text message that he once replied, and the only reply was like, that's a very manipulative thing you've said, when she was 20 weeks pregnant, and he sent her that message. And if we talk about manipulation, and if we try and think about how, what does she want from her life? What does Zikora want from her life? She's got a career, she wants a family, and she wants children, right? And if you think about it, why did she not have the conversation? Perhaps actually she was quite happy and comfortable with getting pregnant and having a kid as her last chance, and she'd be quite happy and comfortable looking after that child, regardless of the husband in her life. And that's why I think she definitely goes through the pregnancy, because she wants a kid, and fine, she wants him to get involved, but I don't think, I think it's also plausible to assume that that in a way that conversation, the responsibility of having that conversation could fall on her as well. And actually, it's manipulative in a way for her to have assumed that he would feel the same about her having a child. Sorry.
I mean, I don't want to call him manipulative, because again, this is something that men often refer to women, like call women, like, oh, she played me. Like, what, did you fall on someone? Like, did she fall on your penis or something? Like, so I want to shy away from calling him manipulative, but yeah, it's about having these adult conversations. But I think Zikora was a bit of a dreamer, in the same way that, it's described that she thought she could change that young 19-year-old, but she would be the one that could get him to commit. So maybe she also felt like she could get Kwame to commit, but deep within herself, she knew that he wasn't committal. He was non-committal, essentially. But she probably thought she could change him. And even the way that she replays, maybe I was too casual about how I told him, how she was just like, oh, I'm late, like in the way that they do it in movies.
Yeah.
She was a bit childish as well, now that I think about it. For a 39-year-old woman, she wasn't that childish in a few kind of cases. Like, for example, obviously, the post-pregnancy, she's very vulnerable, the father's not there, but she's kind of there, kind of like, wanting her mom to stay forever. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I can't speak on how she might have felt after that, but there was just our conversations with her cousin, for example, and the way they spoke, the way she kind of kept texting the Don, like, after he blatantly was ghosting her, like, even taking, letting him know that it's a boy. Like, after a while, surely, if you've got any sense, you'll be able to know that this dude is not gonna holler you back, like. I don't know what people thought about that. Was there kind of like was that a flaw in her character, her childishness? Maybe she, I don't know, did she lack like a suitable father figure, especially because her dad seemed kind of basically walked out of, his family. Yeah. What do you think, Louise?
I was going to say that she is likely a product of the role models that she's had growing up. I mean, her dad was marrying another wife when she was 8 years old, and then seeing that her mum sort of tried to explain it to her as it being normal, and she might have internalized that as meaning, okay, my needs as a woman come second to the needs and desires of a man, and she might be carrying a feeling of rejection from her father, and also the rejection from the first boyfriend that she got pregnant by, because she talks about the fact that she realized that love had to feel like hunger to be true. She was trying to make this guy love her, but using a method that wasn't effective. And the loneliness of the realization that he didn't love her, I think, is what drove her decision to have an abortion, because she wanted that happy ending. She wanted to have a child with somebody that wanted to have a child and wanted to have a relationship. And so when she gets into her relationship with Kwame, that's the foundation that she's working with. And so maybe in their relationship, she put his needs before her own, and in not telling him that she wanted to have a child is her way of not losing him, not speaking up and expressing, okay, this is what I want, this is what I need, because it's like learned behavior that she's mirroring of her mother, of her cousin, who seems to see sex as a thing for pleasing her husband, right, as opposed to being a mutually beneficial exercise. And yeah, I suspect she's also experiencing rejection from Kwame, from his ghosting. And it's interesting, when after she's had her child, the dad says, congratulations, where's my grandson? That's his focus. It's, I want to meet my grandson, that again, another male is going to take more priority over her, and the focus is on her child as opposed to her, and comforting her in her loss of her partner, in, you know, the thought of her having to be a single mother. Nobody seems to be addressing that. It's, oh yeah, we have a grandson. You know, that's the most important thing to her, and to him and to her mother, which for me is sad. It's sad to see that she's kind of on the outside looking in.
Yeah, to play devil's avocado, right? It feels like she unfortunately got lost in the sauce, in Kwame's sauce, because like she maybe made the assumption, because, you know, his family was perfect, everyone loved him, he had the perfect job, he was different to all the other kind of boyfriends that she might have had, different to all the other, you know, Black men in America. She assumed that he would also be, you know, different when it came to, you know, having a family, that he would automatically be like, yes, of course I want to have a family. She kind of made that assumption based off of the way he was in other situations, you know.
Yeah.
And that was a fatal error that she made. And of course, she shouldn't solely be blamed for that, but unfortunately, she could have done a little bit of due diligence, and she does kind of need to take a little bit of accountability for missing that slightly. And then her going back and playing the flashback of how he was in certain situations, when it came to her needs as a woman, or her body as a woman, kind of shows that, yeah, she was a bit, she let a few things slide because he ticked all the other boxes. And unfortunately, you know, there's a little, she does need to kind of own a little bit of percentage of that. And of course he gets the lion's share in my eyes, but she also did kind of like, yeah, she didn't really do a due diligence when it came to talking about starting a family, because that's something that's important. Like, if this is someone you're going to be with, you don't just casually assume, especially if it's a dude who's saying a few kind of questionable things. Don't be blinded by the lights, you know.
And I think, Katasi, I would like to sort of rephrase myself. So when I talked about manipulation, I meant manipulation in the subconscious way. So I didn't mean, so, you know, like what you've just all explained, she's had experiences, and the experiences you have sort of affect sort of the decisions you make and the sort of things you begin to ignore. And that sort of subconscious way of getting people to do what you want without realizing what you're doing. And the way that happens is because you know, all these are red flags. So we from the outside can see that someone, you know, just ticking every single box is a red flag. And she's smart. She's incredibly smart, because she can recognize that other people don't have it. But she makes excuses for him and doesn't actually dig deeper to see that what is wrong here. Like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he so bloody perfect? And that's what I meant by manipulation. She was subconsciously doing it. She didn't realize that you know, she didn't realize that she was doing it, but she was doing it.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
Sorry.
I mean, I know it was very much centered on like women and things like that, but
Yeah.
there was a topic that came up that's pertinent to men, which was circumcision, right?
Oh yeah.
It was Zikora, despite her mother, branded it as what did she call it?
Barbaric.
Barbaric. Yes. Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I just thought I'd put that out there because there's men on the platform and she talks about it.
Yeah, it's the idea of it being non-consensual, right? Like these babies don't get any choice, and their parents make this unilateral decision for them when they're young, and then the men just have to live with it. But then as women, would we be okay with such a choice being made for us? And it's, you know, their choice is taken away from them. Because I know, like in recent times, there've been there's been this sort of new movement where people are against male circumcision because it's equivalent to female genital mutilation by virtue of the fact that there's no consent isn't given. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I haven't experienced it myself. Sorry if it's TMI. What are the benefits of this? Because I know there's these urban myths that, you know, that float around of like the benefits of being circumcised and stuff like that. For me personally, because I've never really thought about it in regards to kind of male circumcision. We've been always kind of told the, you know, the horrendous kind of experiences and effects of female genital mutilation. So whereas male kind of circumcision has always been looked upon as though, you know, it kind of benefits dudes
it's
in regards
acceptable,
to,
right?
say that again?
As though it's sort of an acceptable thing that is done, you know?
It seems to be acceptable. There's kind of these myths of like, oh, it kind of protects against certain sexually transmitted illnesses and stuff like that. So I've never really seen it as a bad thing. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh, well, actually, maybe that's something that they do in their culture, you know, maybe that's something that's acceptable. So I didn't really side with either person. I understood why Zikora might not want a baby to go through that. Like, the baby's not going to remember it, of course, but in the moment, the baby's feeling the pain. Do you know what I mean? So you can't really say, oh, I'm going to just flick the baby in the head. It doesn't matter. They're not going to remember the pain, but they're feeling it in that instance. So so I didn't really side with either one because like I said, I don't really, we haven't been kind of told about the negative effects of that, and also B, you know, like I'm kind of very, maybe there is no B. What do you think, Yusuf?
So, this is an odd one for me. So I think just to answer a few questions. So I think it's considered probably more acceptable in males because the surgical procedure per se is probably less invasive. And so something less invasive is usually seen as less painful, right? I think it's even more acceptable as a baby because when it comes to developing the nerves in the most distal parts of your body, this is something, and the sensations is something you develop over time. So as a child, getting circumcised as a child is arguably less painful than getting circumcised as an adult. And that's why there's arguments towards, oh, it's preferably done as a baby because it's, you know, they won't feel it as much. And benefits do include, obviously, hygiene reasons, preventing urinary tract infections, reducing risk of sexually transmitted infections because you know, because of the force, if you take off the foreskin, you're removing a pocket of potential bacterial growth or whatever. And so these are all the arguments for male circumcision, and the same arguments do not sort of apply to female genital mutilation because the same risks that you're trying to prevent are not there. And that's why I think it's more acceptable from a male perspective.
And there's also sort of religious reasons why certain communities do it, because a circumcision, I know it's in the Bible, it's in the Old Testament, and so for people that are doing it for religious reasons, that gives them even more sort of conviction in their belief that it's the right thing to do. Yes, definitely. And so from an Islamic point of view, so we like to think that every, you know, sort of things that are done have to have a reason for them. And so all the reasons I've sort of mentioned are the Islamic reasons for wanting to carry out circumcisions in males. And also the reasons why it's, you know, you don't do circumcisions in females because there's no protective benefit. But to answer your question about what I think personally, I think as a child, as a baby, your parents sort of have the power to make any decisions about your health and care because you don't have that autonomy. You can't consent. So this whole idea of the baby not having a choice is I think it's not an argument because there's so many things that you do for a child as they're growing up that you make decisions for them. And you don't involve them in that decision. And the reason being is that they're not of a point, they're not of an age to consent to that. They can't think about a decision, they can't weigh it up, and they can't make it. And that's why you make these decisions for them. But then that's for stuff that is in their best interest, right? Circumcision, from what I hear, it's an elective procedure. It's cosmetic.
Yes.
It's like giving someone a facelift.
Yeah, but from a cultural,
Yusuf has just highlighted the alleged scientific, like, medical reasons for it, and I don't think they'd do it in hospitals if it was merely like a facelift.
But it's not necessary. Like, as Kalunji is our sort of example, he's grown up as an adult male. Sorry to put you on the spot.
I knew it was too much information.
Him not being circumcised hasn't held him back in life, right? It hasn't held him back medically. And so when you've got examples of that, you can then question, okay, is this really something that is necessary from a medical perspective?
Precisely, and I agree with you. But I think it's the reasons why these parents make the decisions for their kids is for the cultural and the religious reasons. And there's so many decisions in our lives that our parents have made based on culture and religion. And yes, we can question each and every one of these decisions, and we'll probably be, we could probably still grow up to be, the people that we are now without some of these decisions. And unfortunately, circumcision is one of them. And yes, it's not necessary. You can grow up to be completely healthy without it. But unfortunately, as a child, your parents have, they have the power to make decisions for you. And this is one of the decisions that they can make.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could talk about it for like a long time, but I agree with Yusuf. It's parents had to make decisions for kids. It's the same thing as girls getting their ears pierced, right?
Yeah, I would say that's kind of the equivalent, right?
Yeah,
because your ears will work fine without the piercing.
Yeah, I would never ever equate like female, like FGM, to male circumcision as well. I think it's I think it undermines like the pain and the barbaricness of FGM. But anyway, guys, we only have like a couple minutes left. Kalunji, is that right? Like, we're finishing?
Yeah, what's the time now? I can't
1 minute to 7.
1 minute to 7. I just wondered, was there anything else? Any other themes people wanted to talk about, or just extend it for like 10 more minutes?
Yeah, we can extend. I think we can extend until like 30 more minutes. So, but it does help if it's like within an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, but we got a little bit of time.
How do you do, Louise and Yusuf? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay for me.
Okay, cool. Were there any other themes that you thought were interesting? For me, I was quite interested in that the mother's character. I felt like she echoed many aunties I know of, or the horror stories I've heard about, like women in Uganda having babies, like in Mulago, and being told, like in Uganda, when you were like, when women are pushing or in labor, like the midwife will say, is this how loud you were shouting when you made the baby? Things like that. Like, mum was short of that. Like, she had the sternness about her. So I thought she was a very relatable character, and I could see her in many people that I know.
I was interested in the vulnerability at the end of the story, where Zikora recalls a memory in which it was the second wife's birthday, and she's expected to go, and her mum is asking her not to go, out of loyalty and out of solidarity, given that the dad had shortly moved out of the house and moved in with the second wife. So it seems like that was recent compared to his decision to get a second wife, and so the mum was still feeling that loss. And the mum says, stay and stand by me, because all she had left was her child, right? And it's almost like she's losing her husband and she's losing her child, because they're going to celebrate the second wife, and it sounds like the mum's not invited, she has to stay home, or she's chosen not to go. And then Zikora realizing now that she's a parent, like what her mum was feeling in that moment, because at the time she said that she couldn't really appreciate it, and now she can understand. And when she says a recurring image, my mother turning away, retreating, closing windows on herself, it sounds like that's been a common theme of what she's witnessed her mother doing growing up, not putting her needs at the forefront, and potentially there may be more to the story around her relationship with her husband, and potentially her relationship with her father, like Zikora's grandfather. It sounds like the mum has a story of her own that would be interested in delving into?
You're on mute, Kalonji. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, so sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, Katasi, you mentioned something that made me think of actually maybe what I perceive to be the central theme of this book, even the fact that it's titled Zikora. It kind of feels like Chimamanda is talking about how quickly and easily a woman, or more specifically a Black woman's needs, are sidelined, how easily they're sidelined. Because at the beginning of the book, she's she's given birth, and the Iranian doctor is kind of telling her, no, not yet, you don't need the epidural, you're not in pain, you're not quite in pain yet. And that's such a common kind of phrase, or something that's said to a lot of Black women when it comes to going to hospital and giving birth, from what I understand. And she gives like an interesting statistic about in the Black women in the States being 4 to 5 times more likely to go through terrible complications during birth. So like it feels like, even thinking about how easily Kwame just puts her to one side and moves on, how easily the dad says, hey, get out of the way, let me see the baby now, how quickly the mom herself, how she was quickly sidelined as well. So it just feels like, I don't know, she was making a lot of really strong points, and in the Kindle you see how many people were highlighting certain points. So yeah, so it just feels like that's such a major central theme in the book, just like women's needs, and specifically Black women's needs, how they're easily sidelined at such vulnerable situations and moments in their lives.
Yeah.
And also the resilience of the women, despite everything that they've endured. They're still able to be of counsel to each other and raise their children, even from a place of brokenness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So usually at the end, we just kind of like use this as an opportunity for our members to, talk about something that they're working on at the moment. It doesn't need to be anything major or big. It could just be that, like Louise, you said, you're washing your hair or whatever you're working on. So I'll quickly go. So I'm a creative, so I've always got like music that I'm working on, or plays that I'm writing. So Katasi, I'll invite you to Yusuf and Louise to a play reading of a play that I'm writing about. It's about the politics of Black hair. So that's what I'm working on. It's going to be on the 12th of February. It'll be done by the time this episode goes out on YouTube. So that's what I'm working on at the moment: plays and films and online content. Katasi?
Oh, guys, I'm a new mom, so I am just like trying to get sleep when I can.
Oh, congratulations. Is that your first baby?
Yeah, it's my first.
Yeah. Oh, so you were perfect just to speak about this experience of childbirth and new motherhood.
Yeah, I mean, there's one particular line that made me laugh when she was talking about the eyelashes, because like, how obviously like hospitals are very sterile, so they've got policies on like, you mustn't have this on your nails and blah blah blah, but there's no rules on eyelashes, is there, Yusuf? Right?
No, no.
You can have your eyelashes can be as long as they want, and I remember thinking that midwife's eyelashes are very long. Anyway, but apart from that, I'm guest editing a food and travel magazine alongside like my maternity. So and it's about Kampala. So that's something exciting to keep me out of like baby world, just to get balance.
So, and Louise?
What am I doing? I'm doing loads of different things. I have my own accounting practice. I'm a chartered accountant. And over the last year, I've really been trying to grow my client base and start getting more consistent work through. And so a year on, I can say that I've now got a bank of maybe 10 clients that I'm working with, which is nice. And I'm looking to expand. So if you guys know anybody that is looking for an accountant I work with, great. You can be my very first creative client.
Yes, thank you.
So I work with sole traders, owner managed businesses, and you can be self-employed or you can have a limited company. The services I offer are so monthly bookkeeping, management accounting, tax planning, tax computation, general advice on business setup, and financial planning and financial forecasting. So I will send you the link to my website, and if you're interested in having a conversation, that would be great. I also run a social enterprise called UPay. It stands for Young Ugandan Professionals and Entrepreneurs. We've been active since last June, so we launched in lockdown, and we've held like a couple of virtual events. We're having a New Year's social next Saturday to re-engage our community and talk about what they'd like to see from us this year. So if you guys are free, it will be at 8 p.m. GMT on Zoom. You can find the details on our link on our Instagram and our Facebook.
Okay, what's the Facebook for the UPay?
It's just UPay. If you type in UPay, it will come up.
YUPE.
YUPE, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're looking to grow the team as well. Last year there were 4 of us, and we lost 2 people. So yeah, we're looking for new ideas and engagement. So if you know anybody that's interested in contributing to such a project on a voluntary basis, just let them know.
Amazing. And Yusuf?
Wow, you guys are working on some pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, Louise, that's amazing. That's a lot that you're doing there. And I'll definitely be interested. Would you mind dropping your email in the chat or something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and well, I'm just basically trying to get through this wave of the pandemic, to be honest. So it's quite busy at work. Not doing anything outside of that at the moment. So yeah, nothing that would be of relative interest to you guys.
Do you have plans for this year that you think that you want to embark upon? Things that you'd like to start doing?
Yeah, I do. So I ventured out from, as I said, I think in the last session, I ventured out from writing scientific papers to more of looking at sort of equality in healthcare, and I think I told you about that article that I wrote in the last book club. And actually, it's quite interesting because the next thing that I'm sort of writing about is looking at how, actually this book was quite perfect because it's looking at how women are perceived in very competitive fields in medicine. So I specialize in cardiology, which is a very sort of male dominant field, and requires a lot of commitment, and especially if you want to do interventional procedures. And therefore, this is usually a deterrent for female applicants who essentially have to give up other aspects of their life. And for example, if they have to take 9 months off for maternity leave, that's sort of looked down upon and things like that. And it's interesting because in the book that we've just in this short story that we've just discussed, she's a high flying lawyer, and she's doing all these hours and and still having to keep up this this appearance that everything is still relatively easy for her, and which is not their reality. And so I'm trying to sort of write a bit more about equality and equality in healthcare.
Oh, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So in regards to the next session, which obviously will be towards the end of February, I always ask this: do you guys want us to be non-dictatorial and kind of let the members decide the next book, or would you like myself and Katasi to just do what we've been doing and select the book?
Do you guys have a theme or I don't know, criteria for the kind of books that you showcase on this platform? And that would help me as far as knowing what kind of things we can suggest.
Yeah, but it's usually we focus on African-centered work, and it can be in the diaspora or on the continent. It can be, writers of African descent, or writers who are based on the continent.
Okay.
Obviously, it does obviously help if we try to be diverse and include women and men and anyone else. So yeah, so just have a think about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me not hold you guys any longer. I know you've got some TV to watch.
Can I just make a request? Sorry. Can it be another short story? Because the next few months are quite busy, so a short story would be appreciated.
That's a good point, because it's a short month as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like 400 pages is a bit heavy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Think about length.
So yeah, another short story would be great.
I mean, if you have a Kindle and you can see, right, the books we're proposing are 400 pages long, Kindle will convert it into hours. So at least then we know, right, okay, it's 8 hours of reading. Is that achievable in 4 weeks? That's 2 hours a week.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? That kind of makes it sound a bit more like achievable, because when you hear 400 pages, you're like, oh my God, that's like a lot to read. But when you convert it into hours, it's not actually that much.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So we'll definitely have to think about that. It's just that the past kind of like the last book that we had that was about 400 pages. It was a bit of a task to kind of like
really get into it, right?
Yeah. And because it's a month, and then February is about, if I'm not wrong, it's 3 weeks.
28 days, yeah.
28, yeah. So if we can maybe, you're right, Yusuf, if we can maybe choose a short story or a blog, I don't know. So yeah, so we'll have a think. If everyone thinks about it, and then we'll just send you an email to confirm with enough time as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you later.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.
All on day, the one that fits ya. Katiken Digibajitunda. All on day, the one that fits ya. Katiken Digibajitunda. All on day, the one that fits ya. Katiken Digibajitunda. All on day, the one that fits ya. The more day I go and say, I know she can mash it up. She put it in reverse just to show she can back it up.